Before I start the video, guys, in this video you're going to hear a lot of charges that the feds are leveling against some of these gang members, and they're going to use terms like leader. They're going to use terms like, the motive for these crimes are to increase social media clout and other things like that. And a lot of this is not true. Okay, there's no gang leaders that accuse this one particular guy, who I'm going to talk about in this video, Pierre from Evansmobb, of doing some of this stuff in the streets to increase social media clout, and these other guys. That's kind of like a federal court thing. That's not really the thing that's going on. This is just part of gang life, you know. Riding on the opposite, that's part of gang life. It's not like necessarily, we need to get some clout, like let's just figure out how we can get clout. There's obviously clout chasers in Chicago and stuff like that, but to increase a social media brand, like, is part of a case that the feds make. They have to paint a picture of a particular motive. Okay, they have to pin down like one particular motive. They can't just say, well, this is what gangbangers do in general. Like, that's not going to work in court. So don't take what they're saying with a grain of salt. Actually, don't believe it at all. It's just like they use these terms like leader and stuff like that to make the case. A lot of this is totally untrue. But anyways, getting on to what they're saying, I'm going to be stating it the way they stated it, but a lot of it's bogus. So anyways, moving on to this story. I had dropped a video about this, probably about 2 years ago now, about the Evansmobb Street Gang and the case that was going on with them. And this is one of those less covered gangs on the south side in Chicago. As you guys know, on the south side, west side, I would say about half of the north side and east side is pretty much run by gangs, and it's one of the things that makes it very difficult for the youth growing up in the city, and especially the young kids, because you're coming up in this environment, and just because of where you're from, you're going to get pressed and pressured, and it turns these kids' lives a lot of times into a high-stress nightmare. A federal jury now has convicted a Chicago man of committing a Southside murder to boost his clout in a street gang. A video was released of the alleged incident, and I can't play that because it'll get a content strike. But investigators said that a guy named Pierre shot and killed a 23-year-old named Glenn in 2014 to keep his position in the Evansmobb Street Gang. Now, this is one of those things that's kind of like a court thing. There's not really positions in these gangs. Like these neighborhood sets, everybody's equal. Like, there's no leaders and stuff. I mean, you might have like one guy who, is helping a few other guys get money, and he might have some type of pull over those, that small group of guys, but there's not like shot callers in these gangs. Like a lot of times they make it seem, they'll call a guy a gang leader. With the black gangs, like, there's no gang leaders today. Except for, in prison, that's different, but on the street, no. So anyways, this gang is also known as Gut Gang and Hit Squad. I mentioned that before. And this faction was described in the indictment as a violent criminal organization based on the South Side. Prosecutors said the shooting happened inside of a store in the Chatham neighborhood in the 400 block of East 79th Street. And the violence in Chatham has been going crazy over the last week. But this offender was found guilty of committing murder in aid of racketeering on Thursday after a 4-day trial. His conviction is punishable by a mandatory life sentence. So he has to get life. He can't get anything less than life. So ask yourselves, kids, is it worth that? No. When you're 80 years old, no. The position Larry Hoover's in right now is the position he's going to be in. He is due back in court for sentencing in February. His conviction is punishable by that mandatory life sentence, prosecutor said. He's used the alias Javante. Javante is just another name that he used, but he was previously convicted of gun charges 3 times in Cook County and sentenced to prison, according to court records. But he was back out on the street. Evansmobb is a faction, they said, of the Gangster Disciples. So, according to the Chicago Tribune account of the killing, Glenn was entering the store when he held the door open for the gunman as he walked out. So, what does that tell you? Okay, he held the door open for his killer. He might not have recognized him. He might not even know who he was dealing with. And a lot of these guys are into it with guys that they don't even know. This is the most messed up part about it, man. Like, there's so much inherited beef, and just beef because he's from the other side or whatever. These guys don't even know each other, bro. He held the door open for the guy that killed him. The killer returned a few seconds later and shot Glenn as he stood between displays of Fritos and candy near the register. At the time that he was killed, Glenn was recovering from being shot and critically wounded at the same intersection months earlier. So he'd already been shot not too long before that. Unlike traditional racketeering cases that accuse gang members of using violence to protect drug turf or other illicit enterprises, they said the charges against the Evansmobb and Goonie Boss GDs. And if you guys remember, I had dropped a video on Goonie Boss. They were probably like the most, I mean, they were committing like a lot of murders, okay, in Inglewood. More than a lot of other gangs that we've seen. But anyways, they had that guy, that member O-Dog. You guys remember him? But anyways, the feds alleged that they shot people simply to boost their social media brand. The records show that Pierre was arrested in July of 2016 after Chicago police officers saw a bulge in his waistband and chased him through an open field in the 6300 block of South Eberhart. Now that might sound familiar to you guys. 6300 South Eberhart is right by EBT, okay? But Evansmobb is not EBT. Now during the pursuit, officers alleged that they saw Pierre throw a handgun into the backyard of a residence. He was later charged in federal court with being a felon in possession of a firearm. An FBI search warrant affidavit filed in that case alleged that Pierre posed in photos posted to Facebook and other social media while brandishing guns and taunting rival gang members. According to the affidavit, on Christmas Day of 2014, 2 days after Glenn's slaying, Pierre posted a photo of a Ruger semi-automatic handgun and a message that said, "Look man, I got a Ruger on me. Now I got like 4 baby choppers. Know what I mean? I feel like Osama mother effing bin Laden." 6 months later, Pierre posted another photo of himself holding a handgun along with rap lyrics that warned a rival to be careful or else he, quote, will be shot. So Pierre pled guilty to the weapons charge in August of 2017. Prosecutors asked the U.S. District Judge to sentence him to 8 years in prison, well over federal sentencing guidelines, arguing that Pierre's social media posts were an indication of his propensity for violence. But the attorney said that he was a victim of an upbringing so tragic and traumatizing that what he really needed was therapy, not a lengthy stint in prison. Being physically and psychologically abused at home, Pierre began skipping school in the 4th grade and dropped out altogether when he was a sophomore in high school. His attorney said in a sentencing memo that basically he was suffering this abuse at the crib. He joined a gang at age 12 to, quote, gain protection on the streets and to gain the family experience they said that he was not getting at home. Now, this is according to his lawyers. The lawyers always try to make a case. You know, they always try to like make a case that's going to get the guy less time. So whether or not, you know, the abuse is really as intense as the lawyers are making it out, you know, the lawyers try to paint a sympathetic picture of the person to make you sympathize with him. So a lot of times they point fingers at other people in his circle. So sometimes this stuff can be overblown. I'm just being realistic here. I'm not, you know, trying to downplay like anything that he went through, but I'm saying that lawyers do that. The other thing is that him joining a gang, they said at age 12, you don't really join these gangs these days. These GD factions, like you don't get jumped in and, you know, have to recite all the lit and all that. Like you just go over to the block and you start hanging out with the guys and you get cool with them, and that's basically it. You know, you can just start claiming it. That's usually how it goes. So 2 years later, when Pierre was 14, his brother was killed. In all, Pierre reported knowing 13 people who had died by gun violence. So death was such a common thing. A psychologist who examined Pierre said that he'd experienced more trauma than most children growing up in the war-torn Middle East. And you know they call it Chirac because the murder rate is even higher in some places than Iraq. And when the doctor told Pierre that he knew he must be carrying a heavy burden, Pierre bowed his head and wept. Glenn, meanwhile, was caught up in the same endless violence. According to the Chicago Tribune, after one of Glenn's friends was killed in 2013, somebody wrote a chilling warning in red marker on the wall of a perfume store at 79th and Eberhart that said, quote, "You're next, Glenn." After he was shot in the summer of 2014, Glenn spent months in the hospital. His grandmother told the Tribune that the day that Glenn was discharged, he went right back to the streets. He was on crutches, she said, but he couldn't hardly put one foot in front of the other. But he went and stayed out till the next morning, and he never got close to us after that. So tragic stories, man, of 2 lives lost to this, endless spiral of violence in Chicago, man, that these kids just literally grow up in. I've seen this in the schools, man, and it's very hard when everybody else around you is doing that. This is why getting away from the environment is essential. But sometimes that's very hard. I mean, for kids to do that, if you don't have that uncle or that grandma or that, because that's typically how kids get away from it. They go and stay with somebody else. Dwayne Wade was from an area just like this. Matter of fact, I think he was from very close to this same area, and his sister one day just took him without Dwayne Wade even knowing what his sister was doing over to his dad's house because his dad stayed out in the suburbs. She just dropped him off and left Dwayne Wade there and went back and didn't even give him a chance. Dwayne Wade was a kid, and so he grew up out in the suburbs because his sister and his family knew that if he grew up in the city, he was going to be pressured to get involved in all this bullcrap, and resisting that pressure is almost impossible. And there's all this death going on around you. So they moved him out to the suburbs. So yeah, getting away from it, man, is essential, because the pressure to, be part of that is just so great. It's so great. Now, just a little refresher on the details of the case for those of you guys that weren't in tune at the time. This is from the Northern District of Illinois Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office. A federal grand jury indicted this Chicago man, this is from 3 years ago, for allegedly committing murder to maintain an increased position in a violent street gang, they said. A guy named Derek, 22, was charged with committing murder in aid of racketeering and illegally possessing a handgun. He was arrested back in 2019. The indictment accused him of murdering a guy named Anthony on October 2nd of 2018 for the purpose of maintaining and increasing his position in the Evansmobb street gang. The victim was fatally shot outside of the gas station in the 800 block of East 79th in Chicago's Grand Crossing neighborhood. The indictment was announced by John Lausch. So the indictment alleges that the Evansmobb, also known as Gutter Gang and Hit Squad, is a criminal organization whose members and associates engaged in narcotics trafficking and committed acts of violence, including murder, attempted murder, and assault to acquire and preserve the gang's territory on the south side. Members of the Evansmobb publicly claimed responsibility for their acts of violence. Now, if you've been following what's been going on in Atlanta, where the DA's been speaking on some of the stuff that has been going on with one of the gangs they got down there, she said these gang members need to stop telling on themselves in their raps. They need to stop like incriminating themselves, confessing to crimes in their raps. And this is obviously something that's been accepted in the culture as the leadership has gone away. For those of you guys who are my age, you guys remember the 90s, these leaders would insulate themselves. A lot of times even the younger guys, the foot soldier level guys, would never even get to see the leader. Like, they didn't even want guys in their own gang knowing who they were. They certainly didn't want anybody knowing what they were doing. Whereas now, a lot of these guys are putting everything they do out there. Like, and there's such a flood of this stuff on social media that it's like the police wouldn't even have time if they spent 1,000 years to go through all the self-snitching that's going on. So a lot of guys, it's easy to get comfortable doing that when there's so many other people doing it and getting away with it constantly. But if you get involved in something like a murder, they can go back and use all that just to paint a picture about you in court. So anyways, they're saying that members of this gang publicly claim responsibility for their acts of violence, taunted rival gang members, and took steps to prevent law enforcement's detection of criminal activities. Now, that seems to be a contradiction. They're taking steps to prevent law enforcement from detecting them, but at the same time, they're self-snitching. That's like, direct contradiction. And the whole clout thing basically took them down in this case. They kept their mouths shut. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm promoting what they did and, just keep silent about it. No, it's better that they snitch, because obviously, somebody's crying about this. But yeah, you see how it went. Like, the clout chasing was the deal breaker, man. Like, that was really the whole linchpin of the case. So anyways, this indictment also renewed a charge that was initially filed back in November of 2019 against other I think November of 2018, against another suspected Evansmobb member, that guy Pierre, who just recently got convicted. He was 26 back in 2019. He was accused of murdering Glenn in 2014 for the purpose of maintaining and increasing his position in the gang. And why he really did it, okay, as far as like the actual purpose, whether or not it was just like to catch anybody that they had beef with, I don't know. Because again, that whole accusation that he did it to maintain his position in the gang, I find to be like a court thing. Like that's not really what's going on, you know. So the illegal gun charge, okay, the illegal gun possession charge in the feds was punishable by up to 10 years in prison. People get comfortable and they get cocky with what's going on at the state, okay, in Cook County. And then they, play that same game with the feds and they get slammed. This is what's going on a lot right now, man. Like guys get super cocky and comfortable because the state is being really, really loose right now. But when the feds come in, it's a totally different ballgame, whole different system, okay? And they get absolutely like just body slammed for what's going on at the state, and guys are getting out after a few months. That ain't going on with the feds. So anyways, man, that's what's going on with Evansmobb. That's the latest update on them. Pierre got convicted, and now he's going to probably have to do life in prison. And again, why he did it, just to catch somebody, I don't know, but that is what's going on with him. And that area down there, Chatham, is kind of an interesting neighborhood, man. There's part of it that's like kind of, like the part where Chance the Rapper is from and everything. There's part of it where it's kind of, you need a little bit of money to, afford one of the homes over there, but there's still violence over there because part of it is not good. Some of my big time sources for the videos that I've, was doing in the past were teenagers and guys in their 20s from Chatham. And they were in tune with some of the other guys. I mean, they knew them personally, some of the guys from Woodlawn and those other neighborhoods. There's a lot of crossover, like guys knowing each other from those various neighborhoods. And I think Rhymefest used to live there. And he was saying, like, for the money he was paying for his place in Chatham, he could afford a place in Lincoln Park, which is an upscale neighborhood on the north side of the city. But he, a lot of guys, they want to live around, their community, their people, and help out the youth that are coming up over there. Well, you need money to live in part of that neighborhood, but that stuff is still going on over there. So, yeah, rest in peace to everybody that was killed in this conflict, man. And, hopefully Pierre can turn his life around in prison and still make a positive impact. Prison's not the end. This is your boy, Windy City Report. I'm out.